Je suis ici pour avoir des gages qui sont plus justes, puis qu'on puisse avoir un futur plus assuré.
This is a scene that's playing out in communities clear across New Brunswick.
It's time for the workers to take back New Brunswick.
A lot of people will ask me, what does CUPE stand for, C-U-P-E? Well, it stands for the Canadian Union of Public Employees. And we are the largest public sector union in Canada with over 700,000 members. We have 28,000+ CUPE members in this province providing public services in every community.
CUPE has a long history of labor activism in this province.
In 1991, the McKenna government, Liberal government, ripped up signed collective agreements, putting in a 0% increase, voiding the negotiated increases. CUPE started to mobilize our members just in case he would try it again the following year. And he did do it the second time, but this time CUPE was ready, and CUPE took on the McKenna government in a general strike.
Everywhere people turned this morning, there were CUPE picket lines. The union lived up to its promise to paralyze the province with a full-scale strike.
Someone's got to take a stand against the McKenna government, and I guess it's us that's got to do it.
When this happened in '92, man, that inspired me to no end.
I was a brand new worker in the school district, and that was really when I understood the solidarity in the labor movement, and I wanted to be a part of it. And I think it's important to know that we won in the end.
The New Deal states that all wages and benefits contained in CUPE contracts will be paid in full, effective today.
Après la grève générale des années 90, tous les gouvernements qui ont suivi ont maintenu une politique d'austérité, des gels de salaire, des 1% par an. Et ça a fait que les travailleurs du secteur public se sont rendus à un point tel qu'ils se faisaient les moins bien payés au Canada.
On a tout vu. Des membres qui étaient sur le bord de la faillite, et des gens qui avaient de la misère à arriver à rejoindre les bouts.
Our members said that we should put a resolution forward to have CUPE New Brunswick develop a bargaining campaign so that people can get better wages. And in 2017, that's exactly what we did.
And we came up with bargaining forward, like we can't go backwards anymore, and we have to break these wage mandates. And there was recognition that coordinated bargaining needed to happen, that all of the groups that bargained with government were going to have to stand up together. But another key component was we can't expect members to come to us. We need to go where members are. We need to visit them in their communities, listening to the members, to say, here's what we're thinking. What do you think about this?
On a fait des rencontres de masse où les gens, pour la première fois, ont pu côtoyer des membres du SCFP qui viennent de d'autres secteurs, des gens partout dans leur communauté qui travaillent aussi pour les secteurs publics.
We had 25 different locations, and we'd have 2 meetings a day to hit both shifts.
Il y a des réunions qu'on a resté jusqu'à 2 heures après la réunion à répondre les questions des membres ou les préoccupations des membres. Mais on a pris le temps. Puis je pense que ça, c'était un aspect important du mouvement.
People left there very empowered, very charged and full of energy.
Tous ces groupes-là, quand que c'est qu'on est ensemble, on s'est mis à parler, on s'est aperçu qu'on était là, toutes pour la même chose. On a besoin des salaires.
Ça fait que durant la tournée provinciale, on donnait des tâches aux membres, des petites tâches, des tâches faciles. On y donnait des autocollants, on donnait des plaques pour les autos puis des pancartes. On voulait les expliquer le symbole du mouvement, qui était le point élevé. Puis on expliquait quoi ça voulait dire, le point élevé. C'était pas une question de quoi de violence. C'est un symbole international de la défiance.
I think the Solidarity Fist was very important for our members because it gave everybody a common symbol. Once everybody, even the community, once they saw the yellow fist, they knew that it was a CUPE member that was out there fighting for a livable wage.
You couldn't drive down the street without seeing a yellow Solidarity fist in a window or a license plate, and every time I saw it, it made me smile.
Some of the other asks that were coming were, we had the black T-shirts that were designed with our fist, and workers were asked to wear those to work on Fridays and have a picture taken of you all wearing those T-shirts, and let's put them on social media. So it was really important because you're now asking them to actually do an action on the work site.
Sometimes there might be an area of the province that doesn't have as much involvement or activity or activists as other areas. So you really do have to plump that spot up.
We specifically did educationals for all sectors, all CUPE members. And one was, what is it to be a union? Another course was how to lobby, because we knew lobbying was going to be really important. And then the third course that we rolled out was strike. It's not a four-letter word, to try and talk to members about what are we talking about with strike. Between the courses we ran, there was close to 3,000 participants.
So we were traveling around the province, visiting every corner of the province and the members, and then COVID hit. Bam. It kind of put the stops to a lot of things for us, but memberships all negotiated so they could help in other sectors if they needed. We had school board members going to liquor stores to clean. We had social workers going into nursing homes to help them.
Our members just said, yeah, we'll go where you want us to go. So they were very active and engaged in helping out any way they could.
Then we have the premier who decides to come back to us with an even lower offer.
Le premier ministre Higgs a fait une annonce à tous les groupes du secteur public, le SCFP y compris, que pour l'année 2020, il n'y allait pas avoir d'augmentation salariale.
Our members felt totally disrespected, and I think it actually helped motivate and mobilize our members even more.
En fait, OK, c'est assez. Il faudrait peut-être commencer à planifier une grève ou une résistance sérieuse.
On April 23rd, 2021, I was elected president of CUPE New Brunswick. We were just coming through our third wave of the pandemic, and we really need to come up with a strategy to bring this home. We want to let the Premier know that starting on Sunday, May 30th, Mr. Higgs has 100 days to settle a collective agreements for all of the CUPE locals. If the Premier and his cabinet refuse to act in a reasonable and responsible way, once these 100 days have passed, CUPE members will have to mount a province-wide coordinated action. And we use that time to mobilize our members and engage the public.
We set up information pickets to let the public know about what the Higgs government was doing to us public sector workers.
We took courses on how to run a strike office, how to do up your strike pay, get your officers ready, things like that.
So we had a meeting with the Premier where he suggested a smaller bargaining team. His goal was to have 3 or 4 people at the table, which he could maybe deal with, and having to deal with all of these 11 leaders and their bargaining teams, which amounted to about 90 people. We were clear that the leader from each group would have to be on it, along with some staff. So his team that he wanted of 4 went to a team of 12. And the centralized bargaining team was born.
I thought everybody has different needs and wants, and everybody was looking for something different. So I thought, oh dear, this is never going to work. But as we worked through it and maneuvered and changed, it came together.
On a été capable de mettre de côté nos différences, mais maintenir un haut niveau de communication pour garder la confiance. Puis les gens ont été capables de dire, OK, c'est vrai, on a beaucoup d'enjeux qui sont très importants, mais il faut avoir les yeux sur les gros morceaux qui est les salaires.
On a encouragé tous les membres de se procurer Signal, comme ça on pouvait avoir des communications sécurisées entre l'équipe de négociation centralisée et nos activistes dans les différentes régions géographiques concernant qu'est-ce qui se passait dans cette journée-là.
We have nothing to hide. You know, that's why we wanted our members to know. This is what the government's offering. This is what the government's saying.
The government bargaining team refused to meet with us until the 89th day of the 100-day notice we gave them.
L'équipe de négociation centralisée a rencontré le gouvernement Higgs et leurs négociateurs, et chaque élu, chaque leader a parlé des enjeux qui affectaient leurs membres. Ils ont donné des histoires vraies, du vécu, là, de qu'est-ce qui arrive quand on n'a pas assez d'argent pour payer les factures, pour nourrir la famille.
My example was, members that would buy some hamburger for their family, they're now splitting that up into 2 and 3 different meals. I really wanted to hit home with him that my members can't afford to pay their bills.
But I'm not sure it resonated. In all honesty, it didn't leave us with a good feeling.
Hundreds of New Brunswickers laced up today to say thank you to frontline workers.
This premier was not even thanking the public service for holding this province together. So we had these community marches with thousands of public sector workers to be recognized for the work they did in this province during the pandemic.
Le public était là, était en arrière du monde. C'était vraiment beau. C'était spécial.
I got a call from a regional action committee chair, and she was crying, and I thought something had gone wrong. And she was crying because there were over 1,000 people that showed up to march at this community march on a Saturday morning.
For me, it was an amazing feeling because, the crowd was there and they were all into it. Everybody was standing all in together.
So our 100-day notice to the Premier had come and expired, and then we rolled out and began taking strike votes.
Of the strike votes already tallied by New Brunswick CUPE members, between 91 and 98% have voted to strike. If the province doesn't come to the table soon, CUPE says there could be a strike as early as October.
Le syndicat espère que ces mandats de grève suffiront à convaincre la province de retourner à la table des négociations.
À ce moment-là, on était en attente d'une mise à jour du gouvernement sur les états financiers de la province. Le gouvernement provincial a fait une mise à jour avec 2 mises à jour financières. Et là, on a réalisé que la province était en situation de surplus très large.
Je pense que c'est probablement le surplus le plus important de l'histoire de Nouveau-Brunswick.
Et ça a aussi créé un genre de ralliement pour le public parce qu'ils se sont dit, si le gouvernement a plein d'argent, pourquoi il ne donne pas aux travailleurs de première ligne?
J'encourage les travailleurs, certainement. Parfait. Ça fait combien d'années qu'ils n'ont pas de contrat? Plusieurs années, différents gouvernements. Il est temps qu'il y ait le share.
Le monde, ils sont les moins payés au Canada. Il est temps qu'ils fassent quelque chose.
We were in active bargaining through a mediator with the province. We thought we were getting somewhere, and then all of a sudden, they came to us and said, the rug's been pulled out from underneath us, and bargaining is done.
Thank you for joining us. We begin with the public sector strike underway in New Brunswick.
All of our leaders and their locals had their information on all of their members. So when the strike day was chosen, these leaders were able to enact their phone trees. They contacted their members who contacted their members, and the information went out instantaneously.
So the call goes out, and we staggered it. And there were certain locals that went out on the first day. We escalated it on the second day. So it was that element of surprise as well that threw the government into chaos. And both education locals were going to start on the 29th, which happened to be the Friday before Halloween. Of course, school was canceled because the education locals were out that day.
It was supposed to be the day that all the kids wore their costumes and had their Halloween parties at school.
So Dominic Carty, the education minister, was making comments that CUPE stole Halloween from the kids.
Wish you a happy Halloween, unfortunately one that won't be celebrated in our schools across the province today.
So we made the immediate decision, get candy to those lines and invite the kids to the lines to show the picketers their costumes.
We had busloads of daycares that brought their kids to trick-or-treat on the picket line. It was amazing.
So we turned around what Dominic Carty and this government were trying to do.
Dans la communauté, l'appui envers les grévistes se mesure par applaudissements et klaxons des voitures.
Ça fait du bien.
Oui, c'est comme wow.
Oui,
comme,
oui.
Je peux pas décrire c'est quoi la sensation d'être ici. C'est vraiment c'est encourageant et ça fait chaud au cœur. Oui.
On a décidé d'avoir des lignes de piquetage qui étaient dans des endroits où il y avait beaucoup de trafic, qui était très visible pour les gens qui étaient en voiture, qu'il y avait beaucoup de klaxonnage. Mais il y avait aussi une partie du plan qu'il fallait regarder, c'est vers qui qu'on veut mettre la pression. C'est qui prend les décisions pour assurer que les membres puissent avoir des meilleurs salaires. C'est les décideurs politiques.
So on November 2nd, the legislature was opening for the first time since they closed the House in June, so we decided to go and say hello.
Le son des 4000 manifestants est parvenu jusqu'au micro des députés de retour mardi à leurs travaux parlementaires. C'est donc sous le son des trompettes et des cris que Blaine Higgs a dû répondre à une charge frontale de l'opposition sur la situation du conflit de travail.
Je sais pas quelle planète qui vit. Je sais pas quelle société qui veut vivre dedans.
We were able to organize that event in 72 hours, and we put buses on across the province to make sure that our members could get to the legislature on that day. We even had some communities loan us buses because there weren't enough available. The Indigenous community had loaned us a bus from up north, which was amazing. And not only did we have over 5,000 people on the lawn of the legislature saying, you need to settle these contracts, our picket lines were still active right across the province.
Les lignes de piquetage, c'était de quoi de vraiment beau. C'était incroyable. Ça me donne des frissons à juste y en parler. Plein de monde qui se connaissent pas, mais qui se battent pour la même chose. C'est incroyable. On avait des gens, même de la communauté, qui venaient nous supporter, qui nous amenaient des beignes, qui nous amenaient des dîners, qui venaient nous voir pour juste nous féliciter. T'sais. On est fiers de ce que vous faites. On sait que c'est pas facile.
Puis il y a une chimie qui se fait entre le syndicat et la population qui nous donne de l'énergie pour maintenir nos troupes à aller.
5 days into the CUPE strike that has curtailed many government services in New Brunswick, there is a bit of movement to tell you about tonight. The union and the Higgs government will meet tomorrow.
We were bargaining with the Premier for hours, but no deal could be reached. And then all of a sudden, we were getting calls and hearing from members that the Premier was out in front of the legislature telling the picketers that a deal had been reached.
We set up our bargaining table in front of the legislature and called our members and the media and public to the legislature to hear that the Premier was not being honest.
We have yet to hear back from the Premier, other than he's down here at the legislature saying we have a deal. You want a deal? You come out right now and let's settle this. Let's get back to work.
We heard this boo that was getting louder and louder and louder, and then we realized it was the picketers booing the Premier as he was approaching our makeshift bargaining table.
So, out of respect, we gave him the microphone. Go ahead.
So what has been provided here is exactly what was on the table a week ago, in a different format, but the same dollars as was provided a week ago as a counter from Mr. Dross. Mr. Dross, would that be correct?
Is that when you walked away from the table and didn't respond to our offer?
That's when we broke talks down, yes. But would that be correct?
Mandatory order comes into effect at 11:59 tonight. Any CUPE member working in the health sector or laundry services will report to their next shift in the usual manner.
Premier Blaine Higgs has used emergency COVID-19 legislation to issue the order.
Totally unnecessary, certainly an overreach, and as far as we're concerned, continued abuse of power by this administration.
But we were prepared, and our lines were able to stay strong. And in fact, those that were mandatorily ordered back to work went to work and then hit the lines after work.
So we went back down to meet with the Premier on Remembrance Day, actually, and he was very anxious and wanted a deal. And as of that Saturday, we actually were able to achieve a package that we could take back and present to the members.
On a réussi une entente sur les salaires qui représente de l'ordre de 15 à 17% sur 5 ans pour les membres du SCFP au Nouveau-Brunswick.
C'était un soulagement que les membres pourraient retourner travailler, qu'on avait réussi. Puis une fierté du travail des gens qui étaient dans la salle, l'équipe de négo, mais aussi tous les membres dans la province.
The bottom line is what workers have come to and finally realized is work should lift people out of poverty, not keep them in it.
And I think that's the big fundamental shift we're seeing.
Labor does have an opportunity here, but it's not just unique to New Brunswick.
In 2021, close to 22,000 CUPE members in New Brunswick went on strike for real wage increases. They stood up to a very hostile Conservative government and won. Laura, was this strike led by a majority of women a source of inspiration for you and the 55,000 education members you represent?
Absolutely. New Brunswick for us was the first time we had ever seen in Canada any sort of fight like this, where people took organizing principles, put it into action, centered the workers in the fight. I knew then that this was something that we needed to replicate in Ontario.
55,000 education support workers, including janitors, secretaries, and early childhood educators, didn't just force schools to close, they forced the Premier's hand.
They took on the Ford government, and the government blinked.
Organizing is going deeper into your workplaces and into your communities and building the level of support that cannot be ignored. And if we can coordinate our asks, as we saw in New Brunswick, we become much stronger. The governments, the bosses, they want to be able to divide us. And if we can fight against that by being more united, we're definitely going to win.
It still gives me shivers thinking about how much we changed those people's lives.
Moi, personnellement, je crois que le fait d'avoir vécu cette grève-là, c'était la plus belle chose que j'ai pu vivre dans mon syndicat.
On a fait quelque chose qui n'avait jamais été fait. Puis je pense qu'en plus d'être fiers, on sait qu'on est capable.
The power of all those people together got us what we got. And even though the economy has now put us behind again, that's why we need to keep that together to fight in the future.
You know that we succeeded once before, and we're going to do it again.
Ça fait que c'est ça le futur, c'est savoir qu'ensemble, on peut faire n'importe quoi.